This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this exciting evening of The Express. My guest is already on the line, but before we get to him, I had forgotten exactly how much I'd missed that theme music and Rock's voice. Rock Bordenoff, who does all my imaging for me for this program and for other programs that I'm involved in, is one of my dearest friends in the whole world. And here in the Central Florida area, we hear his voice all the time for Victory Cruise Casinos. But Rock and I go back many, 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 many years. It's been a while since you and I touched base. It's been a couple of weeks. I needed a little bit of a rest and relaxation because I'm also working at a radio station during the day, WMEL, right here, 1510, which I'm very proud to be part of. And my good friend of 40 plus years, John Harper, and I kind of hold down the radio station. He's the owner and operator, president, etc. So hopefully he's listening tonight, and some other friends of mine from the station too as well. Before I get into tonight's guest, who is King Errisson, this is a privilege for me to have this gentleman on the program, I must tell you. Again, welcome to The Express. Gary Allen here. I should have mentioned it a little quicker. But for those of you that want to keep up with me, you can go ahead and get me on Facebook at Gary Allen, A-L-A-N, YouTube.com, Gary Allen The Express. Thursday night, this program will repeat itself on DiversityBroadcastNetwork.com, as well as ProgressiveVoices.com. You can go on their demand channel and get me there, iTunes, etc. And some other good news will be coming along very, very shortly. And yes, the website is almost going to be done shortly. I've had to turn it over to someone else, but a dear, dear friend of mine who I know will finally get the job finished. Tonight, we are very honored, at least I am very honored, to have this gentleman on. He comes to us through Bruce Marin, who is a very dear friend of mine out of Las Vegas. Bruce is one of the top PR people in this country. And I am very pleased to have King Errisson on this program with me tonight. And let me tell you a little bit about this gentleman. King Errisson received his first big break at the age of 23 years of age, when he was playing the Congos and displayed his memorable nightclub scene in the James Bond film Thunderball. He left Nassau for drama studies in Canada, formed a jazz band in New Jersey, and spent a year performing in a Bermuda club, where he met Red Fox, who invited King to appear with him in Los Angeles, along with Sammy Davis Jr., who asked King to appear in the Hollywood Palace, and Cannonball Adderley was one of his big heroes and a mentor for him. As a session musician, King has worked with a diverse group of artists representing a wide variety of musical styles. King has been praised as the unsung hero behind Motown by Ray Sterling in her book Barry and Me, Motown, as well as by Berry Gordy in his book To Be Loved, for the work the artists such as Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross. He's worked with The Temptations, Smokey Robinson, Michael Jackson, and the Jackson 5, and many, many others. My dear friend, Herb Alpert, Doc Severinsen, Ringo Starr, Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Jim Stafford, Barbra Streisand, David Cassidy, who King and I shared a little bit today about David, of course, suffering from dementia, Bobby Darin, Nancy Wilson, Johnny Mathis, Lou Rawls, Barry White, the Carpenters. It goes on and on and on and on and on. He's also the author of a brand new book called My Life, My Loves, and I am very excited to have King Errisson on this program. King, welcome to The Express. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us.
Well, thank you for having me, Gary. It's an honor. Thank you.
How's the rehearsals going? I know, King, you're in rehearsals right now to go on the road with Neil Diamond. And you've been with Neil for almost, since 1976, I believe. So how's rehearsals going?
Yeah. Rehearsals are going great. We're having a good time with new material and rehashing old material, and we're just having a ball. I think it's going to be a magical tour.
I think so, too. Are you coming into Central Florida at all on the tour?
I know we're coming into Orlando. We're coming into Tampa, Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, yes.
Well,
I think that's it, though.
Well, take your number with you, and when you get into Orlando or you're coming to Orlando, let me know, because I definitely want to come and see you. because I used to live in the Orlando area. Now I'm a little east of there. King, let's talk a little bit about you personally for a moment, if we could. You grew up in the Bahamas, Nassau, or was it Freeport?
Yeah, Nassau, born and raised in Nassau.
Okay.
And
I know a little. Yeah, I know a little
uh,
bit about it because my mother used to decorate some of the hotels there. But what was it like for you growing up?
well, it didn't have much money, but it was paradise.
Yeah.
We grew up with a group of people who we ate out of the same pot, per se. All
Hmm.
the kids could gather around one house and eat. Nobody went hungry, and uh, if we felt like eating an apple or an orange or a coconut, the trees were always there. You can climb anybody's tree. You can go to anybody's yard and get peanuts, coconuts, bananas, whatever they had. It was a bit of paradise. You didn't have to own much because what everybody else owned, you had a part of that.
Yeah.
It was
It's
a
sort of like
wonderful
my yeah.
way
Yeah.
of growing up.
Yeah, it's sort of like my family. We didn't grow up in the Bahamas. We grew up in Fort Lauderdale. But when you have 9 kids sitting around a dinner table, everybody eats out of the same pot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you.
In
I'll
my,
tell you.
in my case, I couldn't wait to eat the pot cake. That is the last burnt part of the pot. I used to like that part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when did music become as a young man? Obviously, listening to it in the island music, etc., and the music that came in from England because Bahamas, excuse me, were part of the English Empire for a very long period of time, mostly during your time as a young man there. When did music become all encompassing, and that's what King wanted to do with his life?
I started out playing box and cans and bottles and whatever I could bang on from my father's grocery store.
Mhm.
Anytime a loud can got empty or a coffee can got empty, that became my drums. I never really got into, say, music to playing until I was around 16. I picked up what is called a tub bass, the one string bass.
Hmm.
I played that for a long time, about a year. And then I switched over to the congas because I could always bang on things. As a matter of fact, when I was a boy, I'd beat a hole in a bucket once a week. My mother had to buy a new bucket because I had to walk almost a mile to get a bucket of water from the public faucet. So by the time I got to that bucket, to that pump sometime, there's no water. I can't bring any water back because I bust the bucket up. And so drumming became the thing. It took over.
Hmm.
And playing the tub bass was an idea of a friend of mine. His name was Sweet Richard, who was probably one of the greatest limbo dancers of all times when I was growing up. And I liked the bass. So after studying the tub bass, my mother bought me what was called a K bass,
Hmm.
which I started learning to play bass. And it was going to be my first instrument, but the drums and percussion just took over. So by the time I was 18, 19 years old, I was ready to move on to the music stage.
Hmm.
In the meantime, I was a jockey from I was 14 to 19. I rode horses for a living. That's how I made my first money. So, but the drumming got the best of everything, and it wasn't hard. It was easy. Because when I realized I could make a living off of it, the way I was doing it was just, it became number one.
Talk a bit because people are probably scratching their heads. The tub bass. Explain what the tub bass is for those that are unacquainted with it.
Well, the tub bass is you get a galvanized tub. In those days we wash our clothes in a tub,
Hmm.
not like a washing machine. And you would get a piece of 2x4, make an upright pole, get a string, a heavy catgut string tied around that 2x4, and this way you can attach it to the edge of the tub, and you can make tunes, you can tune it by moving back and forward, and however you stretch the piece of wood, how do you make the catgut whooped. So we don't need a one string, but you can get, I mean, we played calypso out of that like crazy. I don't know if you ever heard of Fish Ray and people like the Naughty Little Flea. They were made on tub bass. They were very famous records.
Yeah, I used to see them a lot. I used to go to the Bahamas an awful lot when I was a kid. I was very fortunate to have a father who was a captain for one of the airlines, and so I could travel to the Bahamas in the summertime. And I used to go to Paradise Island long before there was the Atlantis, if you remember, Paradise Island Hotel. And I always forget the hotel that was it the Bohemian Hotel that was right next door to the Paradise Island Hotel?
I think it was called the Grand Hotel.
Oh, okay. My mom decorated both of those at one time. At one time or another over a period of 15, 20 years. And then, of course, I worked on the SS Emerald Seas that used to pull into the port of Nassau as well as Freeport. So I got to see a lot of the Bohemian artists perform and then nightclubs and stuff, and I always got a tremendous kick out of it.
Yeah, you got the early days, too. You got the best days because those days are gone. I mean, there's no more over-the-hill performance. No decent nightclubs. I mean, everything is dead. What you don't find on Paradise Island or the Atlantis Hotel, it's just about nothing. It's all gone.
Yeah, I used to take the tourists into Ronnie's Rebel Room, which was
Ronnie's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, it was an interesting little club, and I used to warn all the kids who were on the ship that, listen, you're in foreign country now. If you get yourself in trouble, the ship's not going to be able to necessarily get you out of it. But boy, I loved everybody at Ronnie's Rebel Room. They treated me nice. They always treated me with great respect. I couldn't figure out why, maybe because I was a cruise staff, but nevertheless, they were good people. King, did music come easy to you?
Yes. I was quite fortunate that it was easy. It was very easy. I mean, of course, I didn't learn how to write my own music until after I finished the movie Thunderball, because I got a lesson there. The producers of Thunderball asked me to write the theme song for Thunderball when they hired me to perform in the nightclub scene. And I was illiterate to a theme song, or in the way that it would have been written. I wrote about the elements, thunder and Thunderball. It's sort of about the man, and the guy that wrote the song for Tom Jones to sing, he wrote about the man. He gave the man praise. I was giving God praise for thunder and lightning and making that my premise. Well, that was a good lesson for me. They liked what I did, but it didn't tell their story. So I didn't get that part. But I did end up in the film, and it was a good break for me.
Yes, that was your break that propelled you into the spotlight. And I've told many people in the last couple of days about you coming on, and they were trying to remember your part in Thunderball. How did you get on Thunderball to begin with, that they took note of you? Was it because of your Congo playing that they took note of you and they needed someone for a particular scene, or?
Yeah. I was performing in a club called the Conch Shell Club. And back then, I mean, I had about at least 300 to 400 people a night would come through the Conch Shell Club. And one night, Sean Connery, Kevin McClory, who's the producer, the female star, Claudine Agar and Priscilla. I mean, everybody came in to the club and heard me doing a drum solo. I used to, in all of my sets, I would do a solo before I leave the stage.
Yes.
And they came in at the time that I was doing the drum solo. And Sean Connery walked up to the stage, and I mean, he was just flabbergasted about my playing. So was Mr. McClory, who was a native of the Bahamas. I mean, he came from England, but he's by now living in the Bahamas on Paradise Island. And the conch shell was their stomping ground for the 3 months that they were down there shooting. So they got to see me more than once. And one night he just came in and says, you know, you got the part. And I said, part of what? We want you in the movie. You know, so it was a blessed thing. And funny, I had just come back from Japan where I had a limbo show with a guy named the Deacon and a girl named Regina. We did a couple weeks, about 6 months or more in Tokyo and Osaka and Kyoto. And I just came back when I got this job at the Concert Club with this guy named Roy Bowe. And here I am 2 months back into the Bahamas, and I land this beautiful job. And I've always told my sons and all my friends, it's nothing greater than being ready and being at the right place at the right time and being ready to take advantage of it. And I was. And the rest is history.
You're listening to The Express. This is Gary Allen along with my distinguished guest, King Errisson, who is the author of a brand new book, My Life, My Loves, as well as a CD, In My Secret Life. We're talking about his wonderful and marvelous, amazing career in the music industry, one in which Berry Gordy praises him quite highly. When you worked with Sean Connery, because I've worked in the past with a number of Sean Connery impersonators, and it's never quite the same. I liked Sean Connery. I happen to like the guy that's doing it now. I think he's closer to the character that they created. But what was Sean Connery like?
He was quite a nice guy. I mean, very easy, very down to earth. You know, I thought he was quite a very nice man. As a matter of fact, that whole cast of those people were beautiful people to be around. I liked all of them. Ken Adams, Kevin McClory, the girls, and all of the set designers. They were beautiful. In fact, I learned many years ago, I'd say about 5 years ago, that the Bond film I played in was the first one to win an Academy Award for set designing. So I started out being a winner, just being in a movie like that.
Yeah, I mean it's always great. And yes, you know, Sean, he was always good, you know, and I just got to break into my Connery like an idiot. I got to break into my Sean Connery. I'm sure Bruce told you, Bruce Marin, who is one of my dear friends in the whole world. So I'll break into my impersonations any opportunity I get. You talked earlier about the fact that you were a jockey on horses. What was that like as a child?
That was beautiful. I was always a daring person. I had a cousin who was older than me. We grew up in the same house, and he was about 7 years older than me, and he was a jockey, and he was making so much money and doing so well. I said, I want to do that too. So I would ditch school at 13 years old. I ditched school half of the year almost. That's why I ended up being a dummy. I got so used to making money. You know. Yeah. I said, and then my mom and my dad broke up, so I know going to school wasn't going to help me take care of her and her 4 children. So I went to the races. And I was able to build a house by the time I was 18 years old and help take care of my brothers and sisters. And, you know, there was times when I thought I should be a lawyer or somebody really important, but making a living for my brothers and sisters and helping my mom was more important than anything else. And that's where the horses came in. And I made good money. I won a lot of races, and I became a household name in the Bahamas on horseback.
Do you have any tips for any of our audience members who like to gamble on the horses, what to look for?
You know what? I I lost so much money on the horses since I stopped being a jockey. I don't even go there. It's because my first couple of years of not riding anymore and having a few dollars to bet, think I know something. Even when you made a deal with somebody, they screwed you during the deal.
Yeah.
So, the tip with horses is go with your gut. Watch the way the horse strut down the paddock door as he entered the racetrack to go out there. And don't believe nothing nobody say except your feeling. Well, I mean, you can look at a fast horse and tell, what the horse is going to do. But you never go with some old man going with 8-8 because Jimmy just told me that's the horse going to win today. No.
No, I like you lived in Las Vegas for not as many years as you did, but I lived in Las Vegas for 10 years, and I used to be able to walk through a casino. I hear the bells and whistles, but I was never a gambler. I got cured of that when I was in high school. That's a long story, and I'm not going to get into it. As you finished up with the James Bond movie Thunderball, you moved to Canada to study drama, and then you ended up in New York where you began a band.
Yeah, well, it's a long story there. After Thunderball, I got a call from a guy from Toronto, Canada. I can't think of his name, Alvarez or something like that. And he had a club was called the Caravan Club over on Queen Street. And he was the first one to book me after the movie. And after that, for a year, I stayed in this club as the star of this club and did wonderful. But one night, a friend of mine from Buffalo, New York, came to the club. He found out I was in Toronto, so they could just drive across the bridge. And he came over, and he was having a party the following week. And he says, if you got a day off, I'd like for you to come play to my party. I'm going to have 100 people there for a birthday party. So I said, yeah. So that Friday night, I was able to get off and just drive over and do this concert for this guy. His name was Martin J. Heights. Well, ignorant me, I figured if you can drive over there and take your drums and stuff, you could go play. I didn't know you needed a permit to play. So on the stage, me and about the guy hired 3 or 4. I know you heard of King Errisson. Because you've been to Nassau. King Eric was hired as well, and a couple other Bahamian people. So I drive there and I go to the guy's function, and all of my Bahamian buddies are there. And we're having a ball on stage when we got a raid. All of the immigration officers and everybody came and locked up every Bahamian that was on that stage. We all got locked up. And I had a fight with the immigration. I said, why is this happening? He said, because you people are here working for nothing, and they could be giving somebody a job. I said, but as good as I am, there's nobody out here who could play like I do. So, and I'm doing my friend a favor. He says, oh, well, that's worse. So now, 2 weeks later, I wanted to go to New York. I met a guy named Thomas Murray, who wanted to be in the management business. And he said, when you get some time, give me a call, come over, let's sit down and talk. Because back in those days, I was willing to try anything and do anything to just keep going, getting bigger and higher in my music business. Anyhow, trying to leave Canada to go to New York, I didn't know that the night that they arrested me, they wrote something in my passport, and it was a sub-deportation, which means I was deported from the United States.
Wow.
So I couldn't get into New York anymore unless I take a plane that was going to, they said I had to go to Nassau and then come back around. So when the plane, I took a Pan American Airlines, and when we landed in New York, I was not supposed to get off the plane. Well, I snuck off the plane, leave luggage and everything on that plane, called my friend at the airport. He drove in from New Jersey, met me, and that's the end of his history. Now, the thing that is stupid, I was married to an Indian girl named Regina, who the marriage was just one of convenient to get papers because she was an older woman, but she was, trying to do me a favor. However, I had to call. This is like a year after this incident happened. I called her up and told her what had happened. She says, "Don't be stupid. Your papers are at the immigration office. It's been there for the longest time." Even though she and I were no longer that way. So that's my friend, the management guy, got into the immigration office. They looked up all the papers, and bam, I had papers and didn't even know it. So I had to go back home though. The papers were then shipped to Nassau. I had to go back to Nassau, do blood tests, do all the type of things you would do. And boom, within 6 months, I had papers to come back to the States. And I ended up going back to New Jersey with this guy, putting a band together, and did what they call the Chiplin circuit, where I met people like Joe Williams, Jimmy Smith, Cannonball Adderley became my greatest friend musically. Because I knew nothing about jazz, but they put together a group of musicians for me, some of the best jazz players in the world, and all I did was do the front, and we cleaned up. We did very well.
Yeah, Cannonball Adderley, I have some of his, well, now you call them CDs. We're talking to King Errisson, who was a star with the James Bond film Thunderball. He's recorded with some of the biggest Motown stars like Smokey Robinson, The Temptations, Marvin Gaye, Michael Jackson, and the Jackson 5, Diana Ross and the Supremes, the Four Tops. Did you ever work with my favorite group, the Spinners?
I worked with the Spinners. I did 2 albums with the Spinners. I work with so many people I forgot them. I mean, I loved working with Bobby Darin. I liked
I like Bobby
Sherman.
Also go on King Errisson. That's ERRISSON.com and check out his new book, My Life, My Loves. He also has a brand new CD out, which we certainly will be getting into. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. I opened for the Spinners once.
Oh, yeah?
It was purely by accident. I knew Purvis. For those of you that aren't familiar with the different performers, Purvis Jackson was the gentleman with the deep baritone voice in the 1245. Anyway, I knew Purvis, and their opening act got sick. And they called me up because I was living in Fort Lauderdale at the time. And they said, "Would you consider?" I said, "Purvis, your audience is mostly black." He said, "So?" I said, "Have you looked at me lately? I'm a white boy." And he said, "So you're funny." I said, "Okay." So I'm on stage maybe 15 minutes and I'm sweating like somebody's pouring a hose of water coming over me, or I'm in a sauna. And I find, and they're laughing, they're enjoying it. But let's be honest, black humor is one thing when it's a black audience primarily. And, a white comic, I don't care how hard you work at it. Funny is funny, but, not everything I was saying was going over. I mean, it's a whole different it's a whole different style. Finally, some woman in the back yelled out, she said, "Honey, you may not be the funniest on stage, but you sure is purty." And everybody just started to laugh. Purvis was off to the side, and he just started to laugh, and that kind of broke the ice. And for the next 20 minutes, everything kind of sailed, and but it was fun. I loved those guys. I loved the Motown sound so much. How did you? We're going to move back and forth on your career. We're talking to King Errisson here on the Express on Tuesday, and I'm very pleased to have him with us. How did you get connected with Motown, and talk about some of the great artists? I mean, you actually had Michael Jackson sitting on your lap. Talk about some of the great artists that you had a chance to work with at Motown.
Well, the first I'll say getting to Motown, that was the falls of Cannonball Adderley. Cannonball Adderley was doing an album called Accent on Africa. And he was doing a piece of African music that I don't think the players understood what he had written. And he had met me through the East Coast and know that I can play just about anything, any rhythm or any style. And he told me, he says, for 1 month, he's working on this piece of music, and nobody seemed to understand what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So he and his brother told David Axelrod, by the way, who just died, one of the greatest people there is, told David Axelrod, you got to bring King Errisson in to do this record. He's the only person who's going to get it done. So David told him, no, we don't know him, and we don't have time to take up time with and that's the way Hollywood was. Yeah. Hollywood, they had a little click going, and unless you were in a click.
And it's still that way, King. You know that very well. It's still that way.
Well, especially with the acting and people like that. But the music had a click. I mean, it was like trying to break into Fort Knox to get into that music scene. Mm-hmm. Well, Cannonball told Dave Axelrod, and these things you can read in my book, he told him that let's bring him in anyhow. He says, I'll pay for King's session. You don't have to pay, but I'm tired of messing around with the song. So one day I got a phone call, and I had to take a cab to Capitol Records because I wasn't situated that well yet in L.A. Mm-hmm. So I took a cab with all my percussion stuff, and Cannon and one of the carriers, one of the cottage people was waiting outside to help me bring the stuff into the studio. And cut a long story short, they gave me a piece of music, and to tell the truth, I mean, I could count like the devil, but a lot of figures I didn't understand. But I knew when to break and when not to. And when the piece of music started, I just stood and listened. I was smart enough not to jump in and get myself in trouble and look stupid. I listened for 4 bars, and then I stopped them. Well, what did I do that for? You know, Dave Axelrod and H.B. Bonham, I know you know that name.
Yes.
H.B. arranged a lot of stuff for O.C. Smith and Lou Rawls and all that type of stuff. Anyhow, they asked me, Dave Axelrod says, you don't stop no session here. I'm the producer. I stop it, not you. I said, well, anyhow, everybody's playing everything wrong. I said, if you want it to be right, here's what should be done. And we had about 40 musicians in the place that day at Capitol Records Studio A. Strings, horns, background singers, the whole bit. Well, when I got through telling people like Earl Palmer, who's the greatest drummer in the world, what beat he should use, Max Bennett, who's one of the best bass players ever, I just went around the room and told the rhythm section what they should do, how they should do it, and don't stop doing anything that I say do. Well, you know what? We did one take. And everybody hugged. I've never been hugged and kissed by so many white people in my life. Everybody said, God damn, we've been working on this thing for a month, and you come here and in 30 minutes we got it done. And the whole album that they had done before I came, Dave Axelrod said, well, now you got to do the whole thing. So that's how it started. I had to overdub that entire album by myself, and overdub was something I never even heard of until they told me what I had to do, put my headset on and just play with the tracks and put what I feel should be to those tracks. And that's what I did. The rest is history. Dave Axelrod promised me that I will work every time he go in the studio, and he didn't lie. For 10 years, I did all his work.
And you have worked with, like I said, some of the really, really great artists that were ever at Motown. Berry Gordy certainly appreciated you. He mentioned you in his book. But you also worked. What was it like to be with the Temps and Smokey Robinson, Michael Jackson, and the other Jackson Five, Doc Severinsen especially, and of course a gentleman who I got to know and on a personal level, Herb Alpert, who is just a really great gentleman. But what was it like at Motown to do what you did, to work with the different artists, and talk a little bit about each one if you can, and give us your impression of like Diana Ross, the member, and the Temptations. There were many members, but give us an idea, and especially young Michael, who you and I talked about the other day. And you worked with Sammy Davis Jr., who I considered to be one of the finest all-around performers that I ever saw, and the only thing that ever came close to him was Michael. We're talking to King Errisson right here on the Express. Michael was the closest thing I ever saw to Sammy Davis Jr. as far as being totally in command on stage and just an entertainer.
An all around entertainer. Yeah, you don't get any better than Michael, who follows Sammy's footsteps. Now a lot of it too. I mean, Mike had some of James Brown as well. The great thing about Michael Jackson, he was such a gifted kid. He could emulate anybody, and he was not shy in doing so. That's why he was so great. And he had the greatest people to emulate, such as Sammy Davis Jr., James Brown, and even who's the guy just turned 90 years old the other day there? Lucille.
Yeah. It's on the tip of my tongue. I know who you're talking about. Yes. But you know the thing about Sammy that Michael had, because I saw Michael perform numerous times live, and I got to know some of his brothers living in Vegas, as you well know. Jerome lives there, and I think Tito lives there now.
Yes.
Sammy was humble. I got to meet Sammy when I was 9 years old. I've told the story. I told the story numerous times, and you know of my uncle. I've mentioned Tubby to you a couple of times.
Yes.
Tubby Boots, and I used to go and have lunch with him from time to time. And one day he called up my mom, and he said, "Hey, what's Gary doing?" And she said, "Oh, he's just hanging around the house." Well, tell him to get washed, and then I'm going to pick him up. We're going to go have lunch down at the Fontainebleau. Well, I didn't think much of it. I always enjoyed traveling around with my uncle. I loved him. I adored him. And we go down, and I didn't ask who we're having lunch with. We walk into the Fontainebleau Hotel, and we go into the restaurant off to the side. Back in those days, this was when Goldfinger was being made a few years earlier than that.
Fontainebleau.
Yeah, at the Fontainebleau. And we go in and have lunch. And who are we having lunch with but Frank, Sammy, and Dean?
Wow.
Yeah. I became friends with Dean, especially. I always loved Dean, and Dean's late son Richie, who just passed away not long ago, as you know. He and I became very, very, very good friends. What was Diana Ross like?
Diana Ross was probably one of the most misunderstood people in show business. I heard, so many things about her that was not true, and if it was, she treated me like a gentleman at all times. I always tell the story that she's the only person I know, other than Sammy Davis Jr., who would share their stage with me without any hesitation or jealousy or anything like that.
Yes.
She kept the spot on her show for me. I worked with her for a year. Barry Gutty hired me to work with Diana Ross. He told her one day, after I was doing a session for him, he told Diane, he said, "When you go to the Grove now, you take King with you, because King will make you look good." And they never kept me in the back of the stage where they try to keep bass players and drummers at all times. Yeah. I was 2-3 feet in the back of her, but out front of everybody, because I was her soloist. Anytime she was ready to leave the stage to change her gown or whatever, she's so gracious and beautiful and respectful. Ladies and gentlemen, and now let me turn you over to Mr. King Errisson. She made me feel so important, and and this went on for as long as I worked with her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's just an awesome person. The same thing with Barbara Streisand. They always say how rude these women are. These were two of the most beautiful, behaving, and respectful people I've ever met.
You know, King, I think when someone of their stature understands how wonderful you are and how talented you are, there's a love affair, there's an appreciation. And what you do, not everybody can play the congos the way you do. There are a lot of percussionists out there, but they're not you. And if they were you, there wouldn't be any uniqueness about you, which we're talking to King Errisson right here on The Express. We're happy all of you are with us. King has written a wonderful book called My Life, My Loves. We're going to start talking about that now. But I think that's where the respect comes from, King, that when other musicians and artists appreciate what you do, I think that breaks down that wall, and they respect you. They understand you. You're on a communicative level, same level. And I think that's where the respect comes from for someone like yourself.
Well, that's a wonderful thing, because I always wondered why they were talked down about, and I didn't find that with them.
No. I've heard some stories. I've heard stories about Diana Ross when she performs and in the hotel, and she doesn't want people to look at her, and if you look at her, you get fired. And some people have said yes, that's true, and then I've had other people say no, it's not true.
Okay.
But you know, I don't know. I've never worked with her. I've only seen her perform on television and in on YouTube and stuff like that. But your time in writing this book, what compelled you to write this wonderful book, My Life, My Loves, which I know my copy is on its way. But
yes, it is.
Yeah, and but I got a chance to read some of it online. Your different chapters are unbelievable. As successful as you are, and you were, and are, when you moved to Los Angeles, things didn't exactly go great for you. In chapter 14, LA Bound, Rebound, you lived in Skid Row. What happened?
Well, I did something that I didn't. I learned a while after that is, when you're going to make moves, you got to learn how to say, may I? You just don't jump up and go, not knowing anybody, or having your thoughts thought out before you make this move. Now, one of the reasons why I went to LA was because I'd lost a lot of money with this guy by the name of Ray Taylor, who was a songwriter, a very good songwriter, who saw me performing at a place called the Key Club in New Jersey, in North New Jersey. And he talked me into going in business with him. So I had a bit of money, and I invested my money in Ray's record company. And we produced an album together, took the album to Gateway Records. We took it to Motown. We took it to the Columbia Records. Columbia, the producer of Columbia, who wanted to sign me up to the label, offered us $35,000, which was a lot of money back then, to sign with them. But the guy had one stipulation. He says, King is not a good singer yet, but we'll sign you up for 5 years, put him through vocal school and so forth and so on. And in the meantime, you still do the gigs you're doing, but don't try to do the vocal thing yet. So Ray didn't like that at all. He says, oh, man, forget these people. You could sing, wait, da, 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 da. So, I mean, I got a couple $1,000 well inside this project. And I'm going along with him because he had a few thousand more than me. And every place we went, somebody liked it, but the bid keep getting lower and lower. So one day I just got up and I said to Ray, I think I'm going to L.A. I'll do better out there than fooling around New Jersey. So I remembered Red Fox, who was really the key to everything, came to Bermuda when I was performing in Bermuda at a place called the 40 Thieves nightclub.
Mm-hmm.
And Red was the star. They demoted me from star to being the opening act for Red Fox. Well, after 2 nights of opening for Red, every time I walk off stage, when my show was finished, the club got empty because we had a dilemma. The white folks who were tourists that came to the island didn't come to hear about Watts. They don't want to hear about when Watts was burning down. They don't want to hear about the Flying Nun. And Red was telling jokes that they said, well, we can get that in the States. We came to see the King. Because then the Thunderball was hot, too. So I was like a star to these people. Red told the owner of the club, put King back as the star. He says, I'm tired of talking to a room with nobody in it. So let Mr. Bermuda continue to be the star. And for 2 weeks, Red took the back seat to me. And what a hell of a guy he was.
Yeah.
And he gave me a business card his last days there and said, now, you should be a star. Here's my business card. I own a club. I can't pay you like you want to be paid or you should be paid, but at least you're on my stage. Everybody's going to see you, and you will be a star. While coming to L.A., I knew that I could call Red and get myself going. But instead of that, I'll never forget, I got off the plane in Los Angeles, and I went to a yellow cab, and I told the cab driver, take me to the cheapest hotel you could find, because I didn't want to bother Red the minute I got there like I was a vagabond. So I went to live in this place called Hotel California, which only cost $1.
Yes.
Anything. Okay. It only cost like $1 or $2 a night. Well, anyhow, after 30 nights of that, I mean, I was broke, locked out of my room because I couldn't pay the rent. That's the first time I saw a jam in the keyhole, so you can't get in. So that night, I slept in a garbage can, And when I woke up that next morning from the garbage can, I saw this ladder, this outside ladder that can take me up to the 4th floor to my room. And I waited till that night, and I took that ladder and knocked the window in and went into the room because I still got all my stuff in there. And that's how I got in, to get stuff out. And I decided after doing that for 2 weeks, before I got into big trouble, I better call Red. When I called Red, he was at the Hacienda Club in Vegas, and his club manager in L.A. called him and told him what was happening to me. Well, he told him to go down there. He says, go get that stupid fool and bring him to someplace decent. And that's how I started getting on in L.A. They ended up giving me a room in a nice part of town. And I did that until, the first night at Red's Club, the guard had it so Sammy Davis Jr., Merv Griffith, Johnny Carson, John Levy. John Levy was one of the first big black music management in the business. He was a jazz player, bass player, and he was handling Cannonball Adderley and Letta Mbula and Lou Ross, Les McCann, all of those people John Levy was handling. And when John Levy saw me on stage, it's the saddest look I've ever seen. I went on stage, just me and a set of bongos that night. And when I was through with the bongos and myself that night, Johnny Carson walked up to me and he says, man, you're good. So what are you going to be doing here in L.A. since you just came from the islands? I said, I tell you what I'm going to be doing. I'll be on your show next week. And he laughed. He says, you think so? Huh? I said, yeah, I'm that good. So he just laughed and invited me to sit down at the table with him and Sammy. And friends from then on. I did Johnny Carson about 6 or 7 times after that night, but not as my own self. It so happened that the word got around that I was in town and how good I was. I ended up doing his show with Eartha Kitt. She heard about me. She called me. So I went on with Cannonball Adderley. I mean, everybody that was in the jazz business was calling me to go with them on somebody's show or another. So I ended up with more TV shows and great shows as if I was a star, but I was just, a villain.
We're talking to King Errisson, who is the author of a new book, My Life, My Loves, and his CD, which is out. And we're talking about his book. He's also a percussionist who has worked with just literally everybody you can possibly think of, whoever worked at Motown. He was also in the James Bond film Thunderball. And we're talking about that. You were talking about where you stayed when you first moved to L.A., and we talked about it the other day, where I lived, which was right off of Franklin and Astoria. And you know that neighborhood really well, off of La Brea. So,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, where you started out and where I had an apartment wasn't much different. I'll tell you the truth. I mean, I don't know if that neighborhood's improved at all, but I think my roommate and I paid, I think it was $250 or $300 between for the whole apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment, and it was right. And my roommate worked down the road at where I met Herb Alpert at A&M Records, which is the old Charlie Chaplin studios down there. But Arthur and I haven't talked to Art in a very long time, but yeah, that was my first place. And then I lost my job and I couldn't pay the rent. So I lived in my car for about 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And then I got another job. Bud Friedman felt sorry for me, and I'd sleep in the backstage of the Improv, which is where Jay Leno used to sleep. And, little by little, I got it back together. My first real job, 9 to 5, was at the Beverly Center. I was doing security work.
Wow. So you had a little taste of roughness too. But isn't it sweet because these are things that you did willingly? I mean, you could have called home.
Oh yeah.
You could have. I could call home. I said, "Well, I'll kill my mom if I says, well, I'm sleeping in the garbage can tonight. So send me some money all the way from Nassau."
We got about yeah. Oh, I could have called mom and dad too, but I didn't. We got about 5 to 6 minutes left. King, you were performing a lot in the 60s, and there was still a lot of racial tension going on in this country. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for Frank and Dean, black performers would have never had the opportunity to not only perform in certain hotels, but to stay there too. Up until then, what people don't realize, if it wasn't for those two gentlemen, black performers would have maybe never had the opportunity to stay in the hotels where they performed. And they literally said, if Sammy isn't staying here and the other performers and the musicians, then we're not going to perform here anymore. Talk a little bit about, because you do in your book, about your first tour and some of the shenanigans that went on, like the coffee in your shoe, which is similar to what happened to Sammy, bits of glass on your Congo, which cut your hands and your face, unmercifully so. But talk about the racism that went on in the 60s for black performers.
Well, and it was so bad. In Miami one day, I went into a restaurant to order something to eat, and I was with 3 other black American guys, and they told me, "You can't go in there. They'll never serve you if you go in there." So I walked in and I told the maitre asses I'd like to have a hamburger and a Coca-Cola. Well, back then I spoke with a heavy Bahamian accent. "I want hamburger, Coca-Cola, please." The man said, "Well, we don't serve niggas here." I said, "Well, I'm so sorry, man. I want a hamburger and a Coca-Cola. I don't want a nigga." So he just looked at me.
Boy, there's a quick way to diffuse the situation, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
He couldn't believe what I said. He looked at me and he smiled. He says, "You're not from around here." I said, "No, man. I'm from Nassau. And I'd like a hamburger and a Coca-Cola, please." Well, he went in the back and told the chef, fix him a hamburger and a Coca-Cola. And he brought it back to me. He says, "You can't eat it in here, but here's your sandwich and your Coke." I paid him and walked out. I didn't care why I eat it. I'm hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, I've had things like that, but I always diffused the situation the more I came on with the heavy accent, the more respect I got, because then I was not a threat to them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I knew how to handle things. I was pretty smart at that, you know. I had an incident once that happened, and this is in the 70s. I went to the Riviera Hotel to do a gig with Tony Orlando and Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And I jumped in the pool one day, and the pool was full of white people. But by the time I hit the water, the pool was empty.
Yeah.
Everybody came out of the pool. Like I was some kind of black plague. Well, I looked at that and I said, well, the pool is mine now. I stayed there for 2 hours.
That happened.
It was not coming to the pool.
Do you want to know something funny? When the Spinners, when I performed with them, I invited them over to meet my mom and dad, and so they came to my parents' condo where they lived, and I said, "Bring your bathing suits." And they said, "Oh, that would be great," you know. And they went in the pool, and I got to admit, it was a 55 and older community, but it was New York people, and they were kind of on the racist side, I guess. And the grandkids were all there, and all of a sudden, Purvis Jackson and Bobby and Billy, and they all go into the pool. They didn't all come, not all five, but 3 of them did. And they get in the pool. You would think that the color washed off, because when they got fully in the pool was empty and people were leaving the pool area. Like suddenly these guys, and then somebody came over and I introduced them. "Oh, you're the Spinners. Hey, okay, fine." I mean, the hypocrisy is just unbelievable. Yeah. We got just a couple of minutes left. What do you want people to take away from this wonderful book, My Life, My Loves? You can also go and get it at kingerrisson.com, and you can also get on Amazon and other places, along with his CDs, In My Secret Life, A Day After Day. What do you want people to take away from this book?
Well, the honesty that I have in the book is I've been writing that book from I was 19 to 20 years old. I still have 1,000 pages that is not even touched yet, because I write every day and every night. I have pads that I keep writing things. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the honesty of it. That's why it's called My Life, My Loves, because it speaks of everything I did. And it'll lead into things that I'm going to do. You know, it right now.
What's next? What's next for you?
The book two is coming. It's a continuation of this one. I am also a screenplay writer. I have a couple of scripts that I've been trying to sell for years, and I won't give up on that. I have a brand new album. It's called One Love. Should hit the road by the end of this month. That'll be in all of the internet stores and be sold by all of my music right now is on what is called CD Baby, and you can buy it on CD Baby and Amazon. And you can go to kingerrisson.com and find out anything you want to find out about me.
And there's a lot to find out, and we've only just scratched the surface about your life, but we are just about out of time. And King, I want to thank you very much for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us here on The Express. We've been talking to King Errisson, who was in the James Bond film Thunderball. Go check out his book, My Life, My Loves, all the CDs at kingerrisson.com. That's ERRISSON. King, thank you so much. When you talk to Bruce, tell him I send my love to him. And as always, thank you again, young man, for joining us here on The Express.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope we get to do this again.
We will.
I'll check in with you when I come to Florida.
You better believe it. If you don't, I'll come and haunt you.
No, I'll check in with you for sure.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. And I just want to thank you. Thank you, King. I want to thank everybody out there for taking a few minutes out of your day to join us. Thank you for spending time with us, check me out on Facebook at Gary Allen, ALAN, youtube.com, Gary Allen, The Express, with some of my past shows. This program will repeat itself on Thursday night at 7 p.m. on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com, as well as progressivevoices.com, their demand channel, as well as their app. It is always a pleasure and an honor to be with you. I thank you so much again for always allowing me to come into your living rooms wherever you are. And so until next time, for all of us here at The Express and TMV Cafe, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.